Welcome back to a very special live episode of App Stories, recorded last week, actually, live in front of our audience in the Club MacStories Plus Discord. Today's episode is brought to you by SetApp, Details Pro, Clean My Mac X, and ZocDoc. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is our editor-in-chief, Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be recording App Stories live. It's been a long time since we've done this. It's not something we normally do, mainly because you and I have such crazy schedules, but it's always fun. I always enjoy doing this. And, to anybody who's listening who's not a Club MacStories member, the way to get in on this kind of thing is to join the club, because we're doing this in our Discord, which is our Club MacStories Plus and Club Premiere. It's one of the perks of that.
Yeah, and it's so fun to record in front, even of just a virtual audience, Maybe one day we'll have like an in-person App Stories live recording, but I really love
that would be fun.
Recording shows in Discord and seeing, the members, come in and ask questions. So what we're going to do today, we're going to do a special sort of like before WWDC show. This episode for regular listeners will come out on Monday, just before the keynote, I suppose. App Stories Plus listeners will be able to get it on Sunday. And App Stories Plus listeners will also get an extra segment at the end of the show. Not at the beginning as we usually do, but at the end of the show with some Q&A, some questions that were taken from club members in the Discord. So with that being said, we are on the cusp of the WWDC. We're leaving in a couple of days.
Right.
Before we talk about sort of our final thoughts on what's coming, what's going to happen, just today, just a few minutes ago, we announced, John, you prepared this excellent guide on MacStories, sort of like our WWDC coverage preview. So let's go over some of the details of what we're going to do next week on all of our properties, if you will.
Right. No, we've got a lot planned, and it's similar to what we've done the last couple of years, or the last few years at this point. But we will be recording App Stories, first of all, basically every day. This episode that we're recording right now is going to come out on Monday, as Federico said, before the keynote. But at some point on Monday, Federico and I will huddle in a hotel room somewhere.
Not sure when, but we're going to do it.
Not sure exactly when or where yet, but we will huddle up and talk about our first impressions from the keynote, and probably also the State of the Union, the state of the platforms, which is in the early afternoon, I believe, California time. So we'll do that on Monday afternoon and release it on Tuesday. And then we've got other episodes planned for the rest of the week as well. So we'll have probably another 3 episodes, I think, besides that one. We'll have to see. I mean, a little bit of this is up in the air, but we're still planning things. But it'll be nearly every day during WWDC. Plus, we'll be doing kind of our usual wall-to-wall coverage where, Alex and I and Federico will all be writing during the course of the week. That usually picks up Monday late and carries on through the week. The thing that is complicated with the 3 of us all being there is that Federico and I will both be at the keynote, not able to write until later in the day. And we also have other events to attend that day that kind of throw a monkey wrench into our schedules. But we will be writing and posting all throughout the week about what we've seen and our reactions to it. And then, of course, for club members, we've got a bunch of things going too. We're going to be doing weekly a day later than usual, because that's a tradition that Federico wisely started years and years ago now, because we're usually exhausted by Friday and need an extra day to kind of put things together for the newsletter. So it'll come out on Saturday instead of Friday. And of course, when we record these episodes live for App Stories, they will be broadcast through Discord. So Club MacStories Plus and Club Premiere members can enjoy those as well and ask questions, because those will be the bonus sections of those App Stories Plus episodes. Will be a Q&A with me and Federico and Alex. Did I miss anything, Federico?
No, I think you mentioned everything. I think, you mentioned weekly coming out on Saturday, and just in general, I think the vibe is that we're going to need to play by ear, I think, especially on the Monday and Tuesday, because our schedules are a bit all over the place. And so we'll keep everyone posted on the recording times. For App Stories in Discord, we'll keep a calendar there. And I think out of necessity, we will have to take a slightly different approach when it comes to the sort of articles that you will find on MacStories. Maybe they're going to be more toward the personal sort of first impressions, like diary style, more than comprehensive overviews. Also because we learned a lesson, I think, over the past couple of years, that we still need to do a comprehensive overview when the public betas come out, usually in early July. And over the past 2 years, we've found ourselves in this situation where we wrote an in-depth overview of iOS, iPadOS, macOS, watchOS in June, and we had to do it again in July, and that seemed a bit counterproductive and inefficient. So we're gonna maybe try something new, a bit of a different format maybe this year. Also because we'll be the three of us together, and there's only so many things you can do at once. So we'll see, but I think it should be fun.
Yeah, it should be good. And we'll get, the important stuff. We'll get all the little tidbits and all those kind of things out for everybody as we always do, just maybe a little bit different format in terms of the stories. It's really driven in part, I think those overviews in July, that's driven by a new approach that Apple PR has been taking over the last couple of years as well. And two, if you're in California for WWDC, be sure to say hi. I mean, we love to see club members out there and readers and listeners of the shows. Come say hello to us, and we will even have a limited supply of our MacStories stickers and pins. They're kind of the pre-COVID leftovers at this point. We're going to kind of use those up and then go on from there. But we've got some, so stop by and say hello. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by SetApp. SetApp is the first subscription-based service for macOS, iOS, and web apps. Developed by MacPaw and released in 2017, that offers developers a source of predictable monthly revenue and seamless user experiences with commissions as low as 10%. SetApp is an efficient way to distribute macOS, iOS, and web apps. And your users will get hassle-free access to powerful apps with no ads or hidden fees. Developers get an additional ways to sell their apps too. SetApp has everything from design solutions and software development tools to photo editing. The service has over 240 macOS, iOS, and web apps for users, and new apps are being carefully handpicked regularly. The SetApp team takes care of payments, update mechanisms, content marketing, and helpful support to help developers work independently and adopt the subscription model hassle-free. Also, SetApp's rating and review feature allows developers to gather valuable feedback from SetApp users, bringing their products to the next level. SetApp shares 70% of user fees generated by developers of their applications that a particular customer uses. In other words, SetApp calculates developers' shares of profits per user separately. On top of the 70%, SetApp gives a guaranteed 20% of a user fee to the partner who has brought this particular user to SetApp. To sum up, SetApp vendors may receive up to 90% of the revenue from each user fee every month. SetApp is a strong network of software consumers waiting for the next iOS, macOS, and web app to power their projects. Looking for a new audience for your product? Join SetApp and bring your product to new users directly. Grow your app with SetApp. Visit setapp.com/developers to learn more. Again, that URL is setapp.com/developers. Our thanks to SetApp for their support of the show.
All right, so let's talk about our final thoughts on what's coming to WWDC. And so I think, first of all, what's going to be very different for me personally is the fact that after 4 years, I'll be at WWDC again. Like I'll be in California again. But this is and you went to WWDC last year with this new format at Apple Park, but this will be, I think, a bit of a shock for me because my WWDC memory is 1 year in San Francisco and then every other year that I've been able to attend in San Jose. And that was like the old format of the conference with, the in-person event, 5,000 people, the convention center, all the sessions and the labs, and you could just walk in and be surrounded by people and, just bump into other folks very easily. Whereas the format that Apple started doing last year is very much different. And you describe this as like being everything is a bit more, how would you say, like you need to go find people rather than expect to go to a single place and find everybody right there. It's more varied. You need to go, maybe there's a small event in San Jose, maybe there's a get together in Cupertino, right? Is that what we should expect?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is very different. And I think one thing that I found, especially in the early years when I went to WWDC and I didn't really know anybody, I really had to make an effort to, say hello to people and get to know new people. And that's always hard. And this format, unfortunately, does make it a little even harder than that, because the thing about the days gone by pre-COVID were that there was a convention center. There were always people camped out in front of the convention center talking to each other and gathering, and that was a way to meet people. Plus, there were only, especially like in San Jose, there were only so many different hotels in the immediate area. So there were always people coming and going from the lobbies of those hotels. So you tended to bump into people a lot. Here, Apple's campus, unless you are attending an event that you're invited to, whether you're a developer or press or whatever, you just can't get through the doors. And there's no unless you're just going to stand around on the sidewalk outside Apple Park, there's not much you can do there. Now, Apple's Visitor Center, which is across the street from Apple Park, is a good place to kind of, when you first get into town, head on over there. It's going to be really hard to find parking because the parking lot's really not that big. But if you can find parking or get a Lyft or Uber or whatever and go to the visitor center, that is a really good place to go because a lot of people will show up and be there. There's also nearby kind of like a shopping center area that has a Phil's Coffee. I forget the name of it, but a lot of people were there last year too. That's a good way to do it. And just to, get in contact with people and maybe organize things. Last year, some developers did, for instance, a happy hour in downtown San Jose at that kind of open air market area. Federico, I think you and I went there and had pizza with Mike one time, if you remember.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. That was okay pizza, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the world's best pizza, but this wasn't at the pizza place.
Speaking of pizza, I texted this to Mike a few nights ago, and I forgot to send it to you. I really want to try this place in Cupertino. So I've been doing some research, okay?
Oh, good.
So this is actually the perfect sort of topic for this show. Compared to 4 years ago, I think there's a particular aspect of my personality that has gotten much worse, and that is dealing with non-Italian food. And so
you've never been good, Federico. Come on.
Look, it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse.
That's tough.
Yes. So I've been actually very much stressing about this, and so I've been doing some research up front in terms of like, okay, I know that I will need to go find some Italian places while I'm away from home. And there's this place in Cupertino called La Pizzeria, which seems pretty nice to me. The owners, it's a mother and her son, I believe Antonella and Simone, from Rome, and they opened this place in Cupertino. And from the photos and from the reviews, it seems pretty good. Hey, if anybody from Cupertino is listening and you have recommendations for like really good Italian places in the neighborhood, please let me know, because I know I will be in total crisis mode when, you can only eat so many burgers.
Yeah,
and fries.
That does sound good. I mean, I think the problem that you find with a lot of Italian restaurants in the United States, even if they're really good, is they don't always have the exactly 100%. They don't have, even if they're straight from Rome, they don't have access to the same ingredients.
Also, I have a bit of a story for you that just sort of happened as of yesterday afternoon and this morning. So I became kind of close friends with this guy who works at the furniture shop where we've been buying all of our furniture for our new place.
You could say you bought his friendship through all those purchases.
Well, in a way, I did.
You spent a lot of money with that guy, I bet.
It's very much a transactional thing going on.
I'm sure he's a very nice person.
He's a very nice person. He's one of the architects who work there. And the latest is that his boyfriend works at one of the Apple stores in Rome. And he's he's one of those employees, like longtime employees, that is like totally like a super Apple fan. And so when I told him that I'm going to Cupertino, So basically, he asked me, "Hey, I want to surprise my boyfriend. Can you, if you get me one of the T-shirts from the Apple Park store, I'm gonna get you an extra discount on the chairs that you want to buy."
Oh, nice. Is those your kitchen chairs that you're
Yes.
ordering? Oh, okay. Yes. Excellent.
So
That's
remind me
fantastic.
that I gotta buy an
I
S-sized T-shirt for the furniture guy's boyfriend to get a discount.
I'll put that on my list. I'll put it on our master plan of tasks for WWDC.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, I want to circle back to that happy hour because Max very helpfully added a link to it. It was run last year by it's the iOS Dev Happy Hour, and they're doing it again. So that's definitely something I would check out because it was a lot of fun last year, and I saw a lot of familiar faces when I went. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Details Pro. Details Pro is a wonderful design tool for designers of Apple apps. It makes life easier for designers by building on the way SwiftUI made life easier for developers. That's because an all-visual interface makes SwiftUI accessible to everyone. Want to see if your design can work in SwiftUI? Use Details Pro to learn the basics like vertical stacks, SF symbols, and SwiftUI frame and padding in an easy, accessible environment. The app is faster than writing code to mock up a design and more accurate than Canvas design tools because everything is live SwiftUI. Details Pro uses real Apple HIG fonts, colors, and dark mode for an absolutely authentic design. Designers can use Details Pro to prove designs are possible and can export SwiftUI to Xcode or send their designs directly to developers. Recent features made from the ground up for Apple designers include Repeat, a feature that makes it easy to design lists, rows, and the types of UI where you normally use symbols. Repeat has built-in capabilities for special cases and changing content, so individual elements stay synced but look different. There's also a feature called Grid that brings SwiftUI Grid to designers. Just pick your number of rows and columns and pair it with Repeat to have a design that builds out SwiftUI's grid layout. Details Pro is free forever with up to 5 files. Details Pro is 50% off for the entire month of June to celebrate WWDC. That means its monthly, yearly, and one-time purchases are all discounted for 50% off. Design your Mac, iPad, and iPhone apps with full feature parity and iCloud sync across devices. Built-in SwiftUI templates are free and help you as beautiful SwiftUI starting points too. Learn more today by visiting detailspro.app and use the link in the show notes to download Details Pro today and get that special June-only deal of 50% off. Our thanks to Details Pro for their support of the show.
All right, so in terms of the keynote, and this just came out, I think, a few hours ago, Mark Gurman is expecting to be 3 major areas of focus for the keynote: the headset, the operating systems, and several new Macs. What are we expecting for these several new Macs, John? What do you think? I mean, besides this rumored bigger MacBook Air, maybe the Mac Pro?
MacBook Air is, I think it'd be hard for Apple to have a developer conference that doesn't mention the Mac Pro, given that they said there's one more to go last time. I mean, and it hasn't materialized yet. So, I do think that we'll hear about the Mac Pro. I think the MacBook Air is kind of a gimme at this point because there's been so much smoke around that for so long now. That's the one that I'm actually personally most excited about because I've got the M1 MacBook Air and I would like to upgrade to a bigger screen and that sort of thing. I guess maybe the Mac Studio. It's been a while.
An updated Mac Studio.
Yeah, because the Mac Studio came out, what was it? Fall of 2021 or winter of 2022? I know I got mine in May of 2020. Maybe it was spring.
I know that 2021
2022.
for me is the year that doesn't exist. I honestly have no idea what happened in 2021 because it wasn't 2020 was the COVID year. And 2021 was like the also COVID year. And to me, those two, they blend together. And so I can, like, for example, off the top of my head, I cannot name the phone that came out in 2021. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that the 12?
Yeah,
No, maybe.
yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I guess. I mean, look,
maybe.
yes, I think it was spring of 2022 now that I think of it. And I got mine in May. I am not going to upgrade mine, even though it did get hit by lightning and I think is still having issues. That's a whole nother story. But I think those three are probably the max that they might announce. It seems strange to me. I really didn't expect more than the Air, to be honest. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Air and the Pro, but maybe we'll also see the Studio. Who knows?
Obviously, the concern, quote unquote, concern here is that Gurman is also saying that this should be one of the longest ever keynotes.
Oh boy! Remember the last one that was more than 2 hours?
The last one that was more than 2 hours, I remember following from home. I'm pretty sure that my first WWDC was not the Drake one, so we are referring to WWDC 2016 with 2015. 2015 with the Apple Music announcement and Drake on stage. And my first WWDC was the following year. My first one was in 16. But I do remember the comments on Twitter at the time from journalists saying that they needed to go to the bathroom.
You know where I was? I was in Twitter's offices watching that keynote in I think in 2015 for the Drake thing. Yeah, that was the year that Eddie Q danced on stage.
One of our all-time favorite moments. In
it really was. That was actually a pretty bad keynote.
It was not a good keynote. And Drake had the retro Apple bomber jacket. Remember that thing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Stephen Hackett, I'm sure, still wants that. I mean, he's probably stalking Drake, hoping to grab that jacket at some point.
So let me ask you. So we're expecting a long keynote, and we'll see. I mean, I'm definitely bringing Sunscreen with me. You should. I usually don't have a problem with because I'm not, I'm pretty used to going to the beach and I'll tell you this, I'm not 10 this year. I haven't gone to the beach.
It's early. It's early. Yeah, it's early in the summer.
Well, but I usually go in late May. We usually go, but we've just been so busy with the house that we haven't gone yet.
It is a warning that's worth giving people as you will burn at WWDC, depending where you sit, especially
3 hours in the sun.
Yeah, well, good. I mean, the way it worked last year, at least, is that the chairs extended into Cafe Max, so you could sit kind of at the base of the Apple Park outer ring and be mostly in the shade for most of the time. But if you were forward, where a lot of the developers were, you were just baking in the sun because there's a big open grassy area right outside the cafeteria.
All right, so let me ask you, but I mean, obviously we are excited for the headset and just the event, broadly speaking, going to WWDC.
Oh yeah.
But what else are you anticipating? Like, what has you excited to see? What do you want to see on Monday?
Well, I mean, I guess I'm most excited about the headset. I really am, just because I think there are only so many times in the course of, your career writing about these things that you're going to come across a brand new category of hardware as well as an OS. So for me, that's just personally exciting because I'm really looking forward to digging in and trying that out. But I do feel like if we're going to have 2.5 hours of a keynote, there's got to be a lot more. So we've already talked about hardware. So I figure that'll probably take them a half an hour or so. We're also, I'd like to see more stuff from the Mac. I really want to see Stage Manager worked on. I don't have my hopes very high for that because I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, if Stage Manager is part of the UI for the headset, I could see it getting some love this year. But Apple's track record with introducing new multitasking systems doesn't really suggest that just a year later they would mix it up and change it again. That's certainly true on the iPad, but it's also really true on the Mac as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wrote about Stage Manager in the issue of the monthly log that is coming out for members, I think, shortly after we record this on Wednesday. And so I wrote about 5 things that I would love to see in Stage Manager for iPadOS 17 and that would make me happy. And that is literally the title of the story. As I wrote in the post, the thing is, I'm a bit concerned about it because historically speaking, Apple doesn't touch a new multitasking system the year after it's been introduced. just especially on iPadOS and also when it used to be called iOS.
Right.
They never sort of iterated with major improvements on a new multitasking UI immediately after shipping it. So that worries me a little because historically, if we follow the historical patterns, iPadOS 18 next year should have a bunch of major Stage Manager improvements. However, the thing that gives me hope is there's a lot of rumors saying that Stage Manager will be the foundation for the multitasking UI on the headset, and that iPad apps will actually be, the sort of the basis in terms of design and interactions and feel for the kind of apps that you will see on the headset. Now, I'm pretty confident that what we're gonna see is sort of a twofold approach, where Apple will say, developers, you can write native headset apps with a native SDK, but I also expect them to introduce something like, I'm going to call it Reality Catalyst, which is the equivalent of Mac Catalyst, right? Mac Catalyst being this idea of you take your existing iPad app and you make a bunch of changes, and there's a bunch of new APIs, and you can bring it to macOS. With Reality Catalyst, you could take your existing iPad app and bring it to the headset with some minor changes. So that's my personal speculation there. And so if that's the case, if iPadOS, iPad apps, and Stage Manager is sort of the foundation of the headset interactions, meaning it kind of looks like an iPad more than it looks like a phone, and I'm talking about the OS here, then maybe it makes sense to iterate immediately on Stage Manager rather than wait until next year.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Clean My Mac X. Junk files, hung processes, and malicious apps can slow down even the latest, most powerful Macs. Maintaining your Apple machine, whether old or new, is essential for smooth macOS performance. Clean My Mac X is an all-in-one Mac maintenance tool that takes care of old junk, faulty apps, and malware in an efficient, aesthetically pleasing, and hassle-free way. Using the app's menu, you can monitor your Mac's health, CPU load, and a whole lot more. With nearly 30 million downloads and 15 years of expertise, this app is a must-try for any Mac user. Run Clean My Mac X to gear up for the groundbreaking additions announced at this year's WWDC. As Apple continues to pack Macs with innovative features, Clean My Mac X ensures that your hardware remains healthy and running at peak performance, so you can enjoy a seamless macOS experience. I've been using Clean My Mac X for years and years. I don't even know how long now, probably somewhere between 7 and 10 years. It's been a really long time. And the reason I've stuck with it is because it works so well. It cleans out the junk, saving disk space, but it does so much more. It lets you monitor the status of your Mac from your menu bar. It lets you check for malware. It does all kinds of things to free up RAM and other kinds of maintenance issues all in one package, which makes it really easy to use. All App Stories listeners get 5% off Clean My Mac X. Check out the link in the show notes or go to macpaw.app/appstories. That's macpaw.app/appstories, or click the link in the show notes. Our thanks to Clean My Mac X for their support of the show. I want to shout out too to watchOS, because I'd really like it. The rumors are that there's going to be some significant design changes there. And having read Alex's excellent reviews over the last couple of years, I feel like he's just a little sad these days because, last year it was like they touted watchOS last year. Apple made it sound like it was going to be some kind of big thing, and it really wasn't. I mean, it was big in the sense that the fitness app got a lot more features, but the OS itself didn't change that much. And I think it's time to really rethink how it works. I mean, you and I talked a lot about this when we did our wish list episode about watchOS. And despite the fact that a lot of engineers had their time soaked up with the headset, presumably, I think watchOS hopefully got got some, some time as well.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about the watchOS story is also this idea of watchOS 10 being heavily based on widgets more
Right.
than going, to the home screen where you see the grid layout of apps. And I think if that's the case, if Apple is really introducing a widget-based UI on watchOS, which is like maybe like a modern take of glances from the WatchKit days of 7 years ago. Maybe that also is an opportunity to introduce more interactive widgets. And I wouldn't be surprised here if this is like a classic Apple thing where they brought iOS and watchOS in lockstep when it comes to the underlying widget technology. So the moment they're ready to introduce a new version of watchOS that is based on widgets, and if those widgets are real time, or real time, I guess, interactive more than real time. If that's what's going to happen, then I think it makes a lot of sense to also bring that interactive widget technology to iOS, right? So you can introduce the same feature and have it become available on two platforms at the same time. And I just feel like it would make a lot more sense than just saying, look, this new version of watchOS lets you swipe up and you see basically like glances 2.0, which is like a static preview of something that's happening inside of an application. I think it makes more sense to say you swipe up or you press the digital crown. I'm not sure what the activation method is going to be, but instead of seeing a grid or a list of apps, you're going to see these interactive tiles that let you perform actions in those apps more quickly. And if those are widgets, then I would expect those widgets to also become available on iOS and to be based on the same technology. So if you're a developer, you don't need to do the same work twice. You can just use the same API and it gets rendered on two separate platforms differently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, the groundwork for this has been laid for years now. I mean, you and I have talked over the years about things like, the atomic units of apps and the splintering of apps into these different pieces. And that goes back all the way to the days of the share sheet and having extensions, but also things like shortcuts and widgets. And we even have widgets on the Mac, although they're carefully hidden away. I mean, I think widgets might be kind of the thing, 2023's big thing, where widgets are really going to take over a broader segment, both on the headset, but also become more important on the watch. And hopefully, maybe, they come to the Mac in a way where they're not hidden behind the clock.
Yeah, well, I actually would love to see widgets on the desktop. I think, enough
I
with
would
this
too.
separate sidebar for widgets and notifications. I also feel like notifications need some love, especially on macOS. It's just so clunky to manage them on the Mac. And I don't know if the answer is a full screen UI or just having multiple columns of widgets. I just know of notifications. I just know that if I click now and I see this stack of 3 notifications on the top and widgets at the bottom, and I can expand that, that's really slow and clunky to use, and it's not intuitive at all. And I just
I
would
never
love to
use
see.
it.
I never use it on the Mac because it just
don't
just
either.
feels so cumbersome to operate.
All right, Federico, I want to get back a little bit to the headset rumors with you because, we also got a rumor yesterday as we record this that there are going to be some incredibly high density screens in this headset that have very high nit counts, which I think the report was that they would be 5,000 nit displays, which, to give you a point of reference, that's roughly
5,000.
Yeah, that's 5,000. That's roughly 3 times the Pro Display XDR.
Okay, you're gonna
It's
burn
very bright.
They're gonna burn my retinas.
I think it's like maybe 10 times the iPhone. I forget, but yeah, it's a lot. It's very, 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 very nitty, as they say. But it's interesting though. I mean, that is a quality of screen that far outstrips anything that's on the market today, whether you're talking about the PSVR 2 or the Quest or whatever. And, that could actually do what no other company has achieved yet, which is have a 4K display for each eye, essentially, which I got to believe that would have a pretty significant impact on the usability of these systems, because it would be, a lot sharper. Now, the other piece of the puzzle, of course, is the responsiveness of the chips that are driving the whole thing, the engine behind it, and whether that's like an M2 chip or something from the iPhone or iPad. It's hard to know, but it really does sound. I mean, the rumors are starting to really point towards much more advanced hardware than anything that has been on the market before.
You gotta believe that Apple eventually wants to move away from having external suppliers for the displays they use, right? And that's
Right.
that was one of the rumors that we saw, I think, last week or a couple of weeks
so.
ago, of Apple trying to bring display production internally as much as possible and manufacturing internally. And, with this switch to micro LED in the future. And the feeling that I get here, and allow me this comparison. So you know how throughout the course of modern human history, space exploration has been used as a way to, really advance technology and production of items that were needed, for astronauts in outer space. But eventually, those inventions and those technologies were also applied to everyday objects, to everyday products and items that we buy and we use. And I feel like, in a way, the headset is kind of the space exploration equivalent for Apple here. A very high-end, very niche product that has maybe allowed them to experiment with these super fancy display technologies. 5,000 nits, or as Raimo from the Discord called them, 5 kilonits, which is just, I love the expression.
I do too.
Just, experiment with this pretty self-contained product that it's not going to be I don't know. Is it going to be a commercial success? Probably not. I don't think it's going to be as mainstream as even an Apple Watch. I'm not even saying an iPhone, but even an Apple Watch. I don't think it's even going to be as mainstream as an iPad. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But still, this product maybe allowed them to experiment with this very much like bleeding edge sort of technology that down the road will trickle down to maybe your iPad, maybe your phone. And the research started there. And so all of these research costs and this investment that have gone into the headset, maybe they will pay off over time, as it allowed Apple to, to establish this new manufacturing plan for, in this case, displays and display technology.
Yeah, let me hit you with a different analogy, which is, this is going to be to wearables what the Mac Pro is to the everyday Mac, like the MacBook Air. I mean, it's the high-end item that is going to test out a lot of the new technologies, and that stuff does eventually trickle down to other devices. And I think that could very well be the case for a headset, whether it trickles down into the Mac line or the iPhone or whatever, the watch, whatever it happens to be. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by ZocDoc. It really sucks when you go to a doctor's appointment, expecting to be the center of attention, and then your doctor seems like they have better things to do and better places to be. Instead of listening to you intently and asking you how you feel and helping you along, the doctor is checking the clock. On ZocDoc, you'll find quality doctors who focus on you, listen to you, and prioritize your care. ZocDoc is the only free app that lets you find and book doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them, and treat almost every condition under the sun. ZocDoc is a great way to find new doctors. As I've mentioned before, I moved to North Carolina about a year ago now, and one of the first things we had to do was find all new doctors for our family. And, that's a time-consuming process sometimes. But with ZocDoc, it made it a lot easier and a lot faster because we could just search based on the kinds of specialists or general practitioners we needed in our area and find out whether they take our insurance. All those kind of things, which are really important, which makes it a fantastic app and service to use. No more Dr. Roulette or scouring the internet for questionable reviews. With ZocDoc, you have a trusted guide to connect you with your favorite doctor that you haven't met yet. Millions of users use ZocDoc's free app to find and book a doctor in their neighborhood who is patient-reviewed and fits their needs and schedule just right. go to ZocDoc.com/appstories and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/appstories. ZocDoc.com/appstories. Our thanks to ZocDoc for their support of the show.
All right, so let's talk about a little bit about iOS, because I feel like we talk about Stage Manager and iPadOS, we talk about the headset, we talk about the watch, and actually we don't talk about iOS and macOS. So iOS, what are we expecting from iOS? I have one wish for something that I really would like to see, and that is a brand new control center. I just feel like that whole UI and the interaction method and the fact that it's not customizable, it's been like this for years, like since maybe pre-iOS 7 even.
Right.
I just think it's time for something new that looks new, that is more customizable, that is easier to use, and that lets me put shortcuts in there or third-party controls in there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it really, when you think about it, it hasn't really even changed all that much since the days when you would bring it up from the bottom. I mean, the at least the look of it is similar to even those days, even though, different controls have been added to it in the years since then. I think that's a good one. It's been, it's kind of hidden away, and I think it's been neglected at this point. And I think having third-party options there and more customization and interactivity would be a really big benefit. The one that I really want to see besides that, though, is I'd really love to see the share and action extension share sheet redesigned entirely.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my God,
yes. And this is a big problem for somebody. Well, it's a big problem for me because I have a lot of apps, but it's also a big problem for people with a lot of shortcuts. And, just that, it's taking the action extensions first. Those are the ones that are monochrome, which I think is a problem in and of itself because it's hard to distinguish one from another. And they're all mixed in. They're not the shortcuts are at the bottom of the list, but there's no clear distinction of where the app action extensions end and the shortcuts ones begin. And if you're not careful with your shortcuts and you turn on the toggle for too many of them in the share sheet, you get a very long list. And it starts becoming a drag on the performance of the share sheet itself. That's one of the things that breaks every year when you put the betas on your phones in the summer, is the share sheet becomes unusable. I don't know what's going on there, but whatever it is, however that's architected, every time a new version of iOS comes out, it seems like the share sheet completely breaks. And I think there's probably better ways to deal with the actual share extensions too, the ones with, the actual colorful icons. I feel like the distinction between share and action is one that has a lot of bleed over between the two categories, and that it's not always used consistently by Apple or by third-party developers. So that adds an additional layer of confusion. And it just feels like maybe it all needs to be mashed together in some way and reorganized in a way that makes more sense than it does today, because right now it's doing too much and it's really hurting both the performance and the usability of it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with all of this. I also feel like on iOS, I want to see some love for lock screen widgets. I know that they introduced them last year, and again, the theory being that Apple doesn't touch a new feature the following year, but I really hope they do, because at the very least, let me put 2 rows of widgets on the lock screen instead of just one. There's a lot of smoke here for the lock screen because of something else that Gurman reported, which is this idea of Apple taking advantage of the always-on display more with this new landscape-based sort of a smart home display feature. The theory being that if you put your phone in landscape and it's on the lock screen with the always-on display, it's going to be useful somehow with these new widgets that let you control your home. And again, I will bring forth my idea of those are interactive widgets. I mean, if you want to have smart home controls and those are buttons and sliders, that means you're dealing with a new kind of widget that support inline interactions instead of just being a launcher. But we'll see. And something else that is also new to iOS, which I don't know, maybe gets some love, now that it's been out for a few months, Dynamic Island. I feel like we've all kind of not forgotten about the Dynamic Island, but I haven't seen a lot of mock-ups and concepts about how Apple could really take advantage of that now that it's been out for a while and there's a new version of iOS coming.
Yeah, I think beyond the Carrot Weather, Dynamic Island interaction and music, I don't, music or podcasts, I don't use the Dynamic Island a lot.
Let me tell you about Timery and the beta, and which is coming out.
I haven't tried that yet. I saw that it got updated.
Timery Joe did it again. Joe Ribar, really, really good friend of ours, figured out a way. This is in the Timery test flight beta. I hope it's coming out soon. But Joe figured out a way to automatically start a live activity for Timery in the Dynamic Island with a shortcuts action, which means now when I start one of my timers from the home screen, right, with shortcuts, so I never leave the home screen, I see the timer right there in the Dynamic Island as a live activity immediately.
That's very cool.
That's very cool. And I hope this is one of the enhancements that we'll see for developers, right? There should be an API for developers to say, if my app receives this kind of push notification, start a live activity immediately.
Right.
So for example, if Carrot Weather, right? If Carrot Weather gets a critical notification for, hey, there's 100% rain incoming at the user's location, maybe Carrot Weather, maybe I will like it if Carrot Weather could start a live activity immediately, right?
Without having to open the app up.
Exactly. And I see that right away, and I'm like, oh no, it's gonna, rain for the next 15 minutes. So yeah, right. I hope we got this kind of stuff.
I want to go back to the rumor from Mark Gurman about using the iPhone as kind of a home display. One thing that makes no sense to me at all about that is that it's an iPhone rumor and not an iPad rumor. Because I don't know about you, I don't really I don't see myself putting my iPhone down on the kitchen counter so it can be used as a way to control my home automation devices. Well, maybe my iPad, which I'm not using all the time, and it has a keyboard case where I can kind of stand it up naturally. But my iPhone, I don't know about that.
Is it that you don't see it using it like that, like in general, or you don't use it like that because it doesn't exist yet? But if it doesn't exist, maybe you would.
Maybe. I guess maybe when I'm working on at my desk, I would put it in a charging stand or something and have it sitting there, and I'd have more to look at. I suppose that's a possibility. But I think as kind of a more general, it's the weekend and I'm doing things around the house, I don't see myself taking my phone out of my pocket and putting it in some sort of dedicated location so that people can turn the lights on or check the temperature on the thermostat.
All right. So before we take questions from Discord members, which we're going to answer in a segment for App Stories Plus listeners. Gaming. I want to briefly talk about gaming.
Yeah, we should.
There are some rumors here. Of course, I'm referring to the headset. A couple of things I want to point out. First, publications that typically talk about VR and VR gaming have also been invited as press to the keynote. So why would you invite, Upload VR, for example, which is a very popular VR website. Why would you invite them to the keynote if you didn't have a headset? So at least personally speaking, I think that, seeing in some shape or form the headset is pretty much a given at this point. But there's also the consideration here about the potential for video games on this new Apple headset. Now, the rumors so far have suggested that Apple is going all in with hand tracking. So with hand gesture recognition, hand recognition, similarly to what's in beta right now, I believe, on the Meta Quest headset. Mm-hmm. And Apple, of course, has been working on this with ARKit for the past several years, really. And so maybe the headset will be the culmination of all this work. But I also wouldn't be surprised if there's a sort of made-for-headset, made-for-reality program where third-party manufacturers can come in and say, we made physical controllers that are certified to work with the Apple Reality Pro headset.
Right. And perhaps even existing controllers might work. I mean, that's something that Apple's been working on now for years, making sure that Xbox and PlayStation and even Switch controllers work right out of the box with the games on the App Store. And so maybe they would do something similar with the PSVR 2 controllers or even the MetaQuest controllers. I don't know. I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I'm not really sure what Apple's historical hesitation to make controllers is. I think they'd make a really good controller, but obviously they haven't done it yet. And if the rumors are true, it doesn't sound like they're doing it for the headset either. And I think that there are games where having a controller is just going to be preferable to anything you can do with your hands. I mean, at least, based on the hand tracking that exists today in existing headsets, it's kind of a rough tool. And if you have a game that requires any kind of precision, that's going to be rough.
Can you imagine playing a first-person shooter game on
right,
the
anything
headset
that requires a trigger.
But can you imagine playing that kind of game with finger guns all the time?
Finger guns, yeah, it'd be
pew,
it would be really fun. There would be a lot of good videos on TikTok and elsewhere, I'm sure, of people doing that. But yeah, I don't think it would work particularly well. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of other rumors, right? I mean, Sean Murray, who is the creator at Hello Games of No Man's Sky, just tweeted an Apple emoji yesterday, which, I mean, if people remember, they announced No Man's Sky was coming to the Mac a year ago at the last WWDC, and it never happened. It was that game, another one that I always forget the name of, and Resident Evil Village. And Resident Evil Village came out with Ventura, but No Man's Sky is still MIA, and they've been doing things with.
Well, they saved it. You see, they saved it for macOS Skyline. So
Skyline,
No Man's Sky
yes.
on Skyline.
You're still wrong. You're still wrong.
Nope, I'm not wrong.
I'll buy you a drink if you're right. I'll buy you a drink if you're right.
Any drink?
WWDC.
Any
drink you want. Any drink
Interesting.
you want.
Interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna go with a very expensive one.
Okay, all right. We'll go to a fancy cocktail bar and I'll buy you a drink.
Perfect. All right. And also, what's the deal with this rumor of Hideo Kojima being spotted at Apple Park?
Well, I think the first tweet that Mark Gurman did showed his lack of knowledge about video games in general, because he mentioned that Kojima was involved or in some way with No Man's Sky. Apparently, he changed that tweet later. He edited the tweet
interesting,
because he's a Blue subscriber and made it clear that those were two different things, that No Man's Sky was going to be part of the headset launch and that Kojima was there too, creeping around Apple Park. So maybe he's working on yet another game. Maybe he's bringing Death Stranding to
Death Stranding VR on the headset, and you walk around. It's all based on hand tracking, and you carry a virtual backpack, and I guess a baby on you, and it counts against your exercise minutes.
Yes. I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think, when it comes to games, they could use all the help they can get. And if you're going to do a VR headset, you have to have good games. And I'm not sure that there is a deep enough catalog on the App Store right now for those that would translate well to VR. So bringing in some big guns from outside the App Store is a good idea. All right, everybody, that's it for this week. I want to thank our sponsors again for this episode. That's SetApp, Details Pro, Clean My Mac X, and ZocDoc. You can find me and Federico lurking around WWDC all week and writing over at MacStories.net. We are on Mastodon, where you can find us and follow us by going to vitici.macstories.net or johnvorhees.macstories.net. And we're on Instagram, where Federico is at Vitici. That's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.